So can I just welcome everyone. Really good to see you all. We've got a lot of people on this call. We just some housekeeping issues are really important. Firstly, just to reiterate that if you haven't muted your Zoom call, then can you do so now, so that we can ensure that we're able not to interrupt each other, and you can ensure that you're not unintentionally embarrassing yourself. So that would be great. Just also to say that the meeting is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded in all your glory as the beautiful figure that you are on screen, then probably best to sort of click off your video. But if you don't mind that, there's absolutely no reason to do that. But that's just for your own purposes. And that's also to say that it means that this conversation and the slides and things are available should that be required by others as well. There's going to be presentations and a chance to hear from our team, our wonderful team, who are going to give us a sense of what the Parish Share agreements are and some of the meaning around that. But the main thing also is that there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of that presentation. So you can do that by just going to the React button and sort of putting up your hand, your virtual hand. If you click on the virtual hand, then we will know that you're wanting to ask a question, and I'll do my best to ensure that we're getting as many of those as possible. If you want to put a question into the chat room and you're able to do that, then please do feel free to do that as well. I'm not going to ask whether you're all okay with that, because that will take up most of the meeting. I'm going to open in prayer in a minute, but just before I do, I just want to commend this whole process to you, having just come out of parish myself and now in my role as Archdeacon. It's so clear to me that talking together and conversation is precisely what we should be doing as the church communities. So I really applaud the team and for coming up with this idea, the Parish Share agreements through conversation. I think it's the way forward, and I think if we're able to be honest with one another and to work that out, then that can only be a good thing. If we can listen deeply and carefully and considerately and gently to one another in this process, I think we will get the most out of it as we go along. So I just want to commend it to you, just on a personal level. I think it's a really good thing. So can we just take a moment and place ourselves before God? So let us pray. Heavenly Father, we are grateful that you have brought us together in this way this evening. We thank you for the wonderful gift of the ministry that you give us in our churches as deaneries and as a diocese. We ask that you will guard us and guide us, grant us wisdom and the discernment of the Holy Spirit in all that we do and speak, that we might understand how we might treasure the great gift of the church that you have given us. And we are aware that in our history, we are very frail with finances, and that we quite often fight and do not bring out the best of one another. Help us, Lord, to be kind and thoughtful and gracious, that the ways of your kingdom will be brought to the fore, and that the light of Christ might shine in our hearts and through our finances shine to be a beacon to the world. we pray in the name of Jesus our Lord. Amen. So I'm going to hand over to Janet and Jeff and Anne now. And I think, is it Janet first off? Is that the best way to start? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just a brief introduction of who I am. I'm Janet Edmond, Senior Stewardship Officer, and I've been working with the diocese now since 2019. And I've been working to support our parishes across the diocese in stewardship issues, things like the parish giving scheme, digital giving, grants and fundraising, stewardship campaigns, that sort of thing. I'm really looking forward to supporting all of you through the Parish Share meetings and meeting you or having a chance to chat to you to help support you. Thank you.
Jeff,
I think Anne next.
Oh, Anne next.
Hiya, I'm Anne. I am brand new at the diocese. I've worked there for a whole 3 weeks so far. I am the brand new parish support officer. So my job is going to be getting to come and visit all you wonderful people in your parishes and speaking to you about your churches, what you're doing, how we can support you, and also about your parish share agreements. And I'm really excited to do that. A bit about my background is that my background is in debt advice. So I spent many, many years working for Christians Against Poverty, doing their budgets for people all across the country, which I really enjoyed. And now I'm bringing all that into the diocese. Personally, I'm also married to a vicar. So I have that kind of bow to my string to my bow, there we go, as well. So hopefully when we meet, I'll have lots of empathy for you. Over to Jeff.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Park, Chief Finance Officer for the Diocese. I've recognised quite a number of faces and names on the call. Obviously quite a number of you I haven't met, but it's great to be talking with you this evening. My responsibilities at the Diocese cover diocesan finances, clergy property, IT, and stewardship. So I'm usually splitting myself across those things. But tonight we're very much here talking about Parish Share, and I'm going to kick things off in giving you a little bit of background and context as to where we are in terms of finances, looking nationally, diocesan level, and a little bit at a parish level, and then bring a little bit to light of what this parish share agreement thing is, and then I'm going to pass off to Janet to take us through some of the practicalities, benefits and support available in that process. So Janet, could you just put up the first slide and go straight to the first background slide, please? And we'll kick things off. This bit will probably take us about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll have a good half an hour, I expect, for questions based on the others of these we've done before. So I think there's three particular bits of context I want to share with you. There's some national work that was done about how share works well. There's a local context, and then there's the parish context. So John, if you just go straight onto the next slide. So early last year, the National Stewardship Team released a report called Parish Share, What Makes a Difference? And so they've been looking at the parish share systems that are in place across the country, seeing what's working well, what's not working so well. And one of the things that they said quite quickly was, it actually doesn't make that much difference how you calculate what share is required. So whether you have a complicated formula or you just have a free will offer system, actually in the mix, those things aren't what's making a difference. They did, though, identify some things that are making a difference. And there's one of these that we're particularly going to focus on and provides the context of where this concept has come from. So the first one was the idea of a project team. So we already had an informal project team at the diocese, but we formalised that somewhat. And that team includes myself and Janet, who are on this call, Archdeacon Bill Bravner of Halifax, and Chris Tate, our communications director. The second part of that, and reason why communications is so closely involved in the planning, is there was very much an emphasis on communication planning and multi-year approach. So don't just keep changing what you're doing each year and expecting people to hear it and respond to it, but try and be consistent in approach and communicate consistently, keep your message clear, evolve it, so that people understand. And the LDBF is the Leeds Diocesan Board of Finance. So that is the legal entity that all the finances go through for the diocese. So we have a communication plan that sets out when we're doing things and how that should happen. Clearly, there's always room for improvement in communications, but those two areas was something that we felt we're doing okay. We're not going to give ourselves 10 out of 10, but we're doing okay. The fourth area, though, was something where we hadn't done that much on for quite some time. Some of you who've been around for a while will be aware there was a concept of share surgeries back when this share formula was introduced in 2017. But since then, we haven't proactively sought to meet parishes face to face on a regular basis. And so that was reading their recommendation that there should be face-to-face engagement. We consider, well, what could we do? And we thought about two areas, whether it be at a large-scale deanery or episcopal level events, or on a face-to-face one-to-one parish basis. And it's that one-to-one parish basis that we're focusing on in this conversation. So if you just go on to the next slide, and I'll give us a little bit of context around where the diocese is at present. So at present, and post-COVID, so pre-COVID, things were in quite a different place, but after COVID, the operating deficit underlying, taking out all the things that happen as a one-off, is around a £2 million deficit. It's quite a big number, but it is one that's been there through the last few years. Now, there are about 5 things I'd identify that we're doing to address that. The first one is more at a national level. So the national church has been working with dioceses to review the money that goes between dioceses and the Archbishop's Council and moves backwards and forwards. And some of you would see that the church commissioners published their triennium funding allocations about 2 weeks ago, and that's making recommendations or making their proposals as to what they're going to distribute into the church ecosystem. And then off the back of that, the Archbishop's Council are then publishing how much they're going to be providing to dioceses and how much we need to pay them for certain things such as ministry training. That information is just coming through and we're working our way through it and understanding what it means. And General Synod will be discussing that in the next couple of weeks. The second bit is strategic investment. So some of you will be aware that the National Church has moved to quite a investment-focused approach through their diocesan investment programme. And you'll have heard of programmes such as Barnabas and strategic development funding. The intention when we apply for that money and we spend that money is that ultimately it supports long-term parish missional and financial strength. That is the idea of that funding, and our intent is that we should see in the long term the fruits of that. The third item is property development, something that's always been there, but we've had a real focus on it in the last 3 years, and we'd hope to start to see the fruits of that. So that is land, glebe land that we hold, and through buildings that are no longer required for housing clergy, that we can use those well, not just to maximise financial value, but also to maximise social and environmental value as well. And there is a trade-off within that that we're constantly playing with. The fourth one is an ever-present cost control. Since I've been with the diocese 7 years ago, we spent a lot of time and energy trying to get this right, but that doesn't stop, and we continue to try and ensure the money that we spend, whether it be on clergy housing, whether it be on support costs, is all spent well. And then the fifth area that we're looking at in how we're addressing this deficit is parish share, and parish share agreements are part of that. So just now jumping into the third part of context, and this is looking at it through the lens of parish share. Looking at parish context, we could have looked at this through plenty of different lenses. I could have taken some of the data out of returns of parish finance that many of you will complete. But actually, parish share is quite a helpful way of seeing how this all comes together. So pre-COVID-19, we were receiving share of around £13.6 million. Then COVID-19 hit, churches closed, share dropped significantly. And the hope and expectation was post-COVID into 22-23 that share would recover. However, that didn't occur. And the main reason for that was the high inflation that was experienced, which meant that energy bills, insurance, building repairs, staff costs, all those things went up. Alongside that, personal incomes were under strain, so those giving found it harder to keep pace with inflation. And all that coming together means that the amount of parish share contributed has been hovering around 11.7 million over the last few years, which is broadly 2 million below where we were pre-COVID. Now, that doesn't take account of inflation, and the rather scary figure at the bottom of this slide is had share kept pace with inflation, we would now be at 18 million. Now, I don't think it's ever realistic to expect that it would have done, but we can't avoid the fact that many of our costs have been going up and have been inflated over the same time. So we recognise that many of you are managing budgets that are significantly under pressure, and Parish Share is one way in which we're seeing the outcome of that. So moving on then to the proposal. What is it when we talk about Parish Share agreements that we're saying we'll do? And I'm just going to give an intro to this, and then Janet will talk a little bit more in detail about how this works practically. So thinking about those challenges, looking at those national recommendations, and also learning from other dioceses around us, the Leeds Diocesan Board of Finance has agreed a process where we will create a 3-year Parish Share agreement with every parish in the diocese. Now, the first question was, how are we going to do that at a scale of this diocese, which has over 450 parishes? In an ideal world, we'd love to do that all in one big go over 1 year and have it done. However, that isn't realistic from a practical perspective, and therefore we're going to be doing this over a rolling 3-year basis, which is around 150 parishes a year. So we will be going deanery by deanery, setting up these agreements starting from the autumn. And that will enable those diocesan officers, such as Anne and Janet, to fully understand the local context and to have a conversation about what is a reasonable share request for the next 3 years, given the local context. Now, clearly that can't be a conversation of, well, we want to pay 50% less in every parish, or else we'd have a serious problem if we said yes to that. But it's about being aware of and trying to be flexible enough to make sure that we're dealing with share requests that are achievable and realistic based on where you are. Now, to ensure that we have some consistency, we are going to continue to use the same share formula that we already have to ensure that when we start those conversations, the conversation always starts from the same point of, well, the share formula would suggest that in your context, we're able to contribute this. That will then create a consistent basis that we don't all just start in different places. The final point to say is, whilst this process will commence in the autumn, there is going to be, for one deanery, there will be share requests covering a 3-year period that will go out to all parishes in the diocese this October. So where you'd usually have received a 1-year share request, everyone will receive a 3-year view so that everyone is in the same place, even if those conversations haven't yet started. At this point, I'll pass over to Janet, who will take you through the next slide. You're just on mute, Janet.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Jeff. So Jeff has taken us through the process and the overview of how it will work. I want to concentrate now on the benefits and the practicalities of the Parish Share Agreement process. So looking at the benefits first, we feel that there are benefits to both parishes and the diocese. So one of the benefits, but really great benefit really, is that we will have an opportunity to meet with you and to listen to our parishes, to understand their individual concerns about what's happening at their local parish context, and explain to us what their challenges are that they're facing, and also to make us aware of what the impact is on them of contributing to Parish Share. We want to understand all of that through the meeting process. And through doing that, we will also have that opportunity to discuss with you what kind of support you would really benefit from. Support from the teams in the diocese that will make a difference to you, that will encourage confidence in your parish and will ultimately help your parish flourish. Obviously, we hope that encouraged confidence will help to empower our parishes to go on to fulfil their parish share contributions over time. But also those meetings give us a really good opportunity to explain what the impact is of parish share, not just in your parish and in your neighbouring parishes, but right across the diocese as well. Often when I'm visiting PCCs and going along to talk about stewardship, I'm often surprised that so many people still don't really fully understand what Parish Share is actually for and what the impact of Parish Share is. So that gives us that opportunity to explain that much more deeply to you. And through doing all of that, we hope that those opportunities will help us to build a really stronger relationship between the diocese and our parishes. It's that open communication that's really important, because that's what helps to grow trust. So there's lots of other benefits as well, but these are the key ones that we think. And as Jeff was saying, it's a big project that we're taking on here, and there's a lot of practicalities as well to be aware of. So how is this actually going to work on the ground? So what I have here is a very simple timeline to try and explain how we think it will work. So first of all, we're going to be starting off working with deanery, but we're going to be going deanery by deanery across the diocese. We're going to be working with parishes in one deanery at a time. And in the autumn this year, we're going to be working with the first deanery. And this is a timeline to try and explain how we will actually run that process this autumn. So mid-August, we will start by inviting parishes in the first deanery to a preparation webinar. That preparation webinar will happen around about the beginning of September. And in the preparatory webinar, we'll be explaining to you what kind of things you need to do in advance of your one-to-one parish share meeting. What kind of documents you need to provide or review, what kind of information you might need to provide to us. Also, we'll be sending you a list of dates throughout the autumn that you can sign up to for your parish share meeting, so you can look to see which meeting date suits you best. And then we'll also be asking you to think about who you will actually be asking to come along to the parish share agreement meeting. So we want you to choose the people who are going to have the right knowledge to come along to that discussion. Normally we would say maximum of 4 people coming to a parish share agreement meeting, which would include your incumbent. So we don't want to have too many people in a meeting, because we want to make sure that we can focus down on discussing the important things and, and really sort of getting into a good discussion and agreement about things. So then in early September, you will attend your preparation webinar, and you will also receive the 3-year parish share request proposal. So this is for the parishes that are taking part in the first deanery meetings in the autumn. They will receive their 3-year parish request proposal in early September. But every other parish in the diocese will receive their 3-year parish share request proposal at the end of October. So then moving into the actual time when we're going to hold the one-to-one meetings, that's between September, the end of September and November, between a sort of 4 to 6 week period. We will have our parishes coming along to their one-to-one meetings. We will have that chance to discuss and agree their parish share proposal, but also identify the support that they most need to help them in their parish. We think the meetings will last around about an hour and 15 minutes. But that's kind of like the timetable really of how we think it will work. Now, when a parish has had its meeting and it goes away from the meeting, the next thing that will happen is we expect them to go back to their PCC and to obviously relay everything that's been discussed, and for the PCC to have a discussion amongst themselves and then agree a resolution and pass a PCC resolution. We want that to be a collective decision. We want you to own the process really, and to be in agreement with it altogether. And then the other thing that we will do, we will go away from that meeting. We will notify the teams that we think will be able to give you that follow-up support. And then we will also monitor that support as well to make sure that you receive that support as you go forward. So that's the timeline. We have actually, we do now have a timetable that we have drawn up. This is a draft timetable in that it is subject to change. But we have actually put together this timetable through consultation with all of our archdeacons. So they have considered their deaneries and they have selected the order in which they think their deaneries would best benefit from the parish share agreement process. And you can see here that we start off at the top there in Q4 2025, and that runs right through to Q3 2028. And you can see how the order in which the deaneries have been suggested for their meetings. Now, I say it's a draft timetable. It's more or less what we expect to happen, but it is subject to change, and we have to have taken into account when putting this timetable together. We have thought about the logistical factors as well, because it is a large diocese. Anne and myself and my colleague Beth, the stewardship officer, we have to attend all of these meetings, 150 a year. And of course, we have to think about how can we hold 150 meetings a year? What's the best way of doing that? Some deaneries have more parishes than others. So the breakdown of how many deaneries are in each quarter is to try and also make sure that we cover about 150 meetings a year. So there's a geographical factor in there as well. But this timetable will be available on our website soon, so you can have a look at it in more detail. But I mean, also, as I say, the selection process has been through consultation with the archdeacons, but if you feel that you need to change your position in the timetable, do get in touch with us, and that is something that we can discuss. So I've talked a lot about the possible team support that we can give you, and I have an example here of the type of support that's available from the diocese, the different teams that are involved in the diocese. There's obviously the stewardship and income generation team, my team, and you can see the types of support that we can give you there with grants and fundraising, parish giving scheme, giving reviews, that sort of thing. It might be as well, though, that you need support from the church buildings team. So we would put you in touch with the church buildings team. It may be that you need some help with your mission and developing your mission. So the Barnabas team then would be a team that we would put you in contact with. It may be that you want to encourage more children and young people and activities in the church. And so again, that team would be contacted and we would put them in touch. And then there's the Net Zero Carbon Church support as well. You may be thinking about setting out on your carbon net zero journey for your church. And then also there's a parish finance support. And I would like to say that, you know, one of the things that we are going to be offering throughout the autumn and going forward as well is a series of budget training sessions. We're going to develop these budget training sessions to help you plan your finances. So the parish share requests are going to be now set for a 3-year period, and that's different to what we have at the moment. We do give you a parish share request annually, but for a 3-year parish share request, you might feel that you need that little bit of extra help with budgeting and preparing your budget for 3 years. And so we'll be running those training sessions for you to attend throughout the autumn. And for deaneries that come later next year and in 27 and 28, we'll also be running the budget training sessions alongside the time when you're actually having your meetings. So that's basically the practical side of the parish share agreement process. I'm going to stop sharing now, bring you all back, and Archdeacon James is going to chair us in the Q&A section.
Thank you very much, Janet and Jeff, for that, which is a very helpful and clear presentation, but I'm sure has got people thinking and with many different questions that will be coming to the fore. As I said at the beginning, if you are able to put the virtual hand up, I can try and locate where they are and we can ask the questions, and then there will be some that are already coming through the chat as well. So if we can do that, don't forget to unmute when you're asking your question. So Noelle, I think that you've had your hand up. You want to kick us off?
Thank you. What I don't understand is if somebody is in Q1 2026, their 3-year rolling parish share setting will be based on the one-to-ones discussion, etc. Whereas if you're in Q2 in 2028, as my church will be, does my parish share continue to be rolled on according to the historic basis that we've known and loved for many years? Thank you.
I'll take that one. So yeah, that is our big challenge, is how we integrate moving through a timetable that doesn't all happen in one point. Hence, we would love to have done this all at a consistent point in time, but practically that's just not possible. So what we will be doing is every year from now on, we will be issuing 3-year share requests. So those that are having their parish share agreement meeting will always be working with 3 years into the future. So that will be consistent. However, we will have a period of time as we go through this process where some parishes have not yet had the opportunity to speak to us, but just have the old formula-based share system. Now, I would hope that the amount of share paid under those two scenarios is not wildly different. I.e., if you've got a share request that's £40,000 and you've currently been able to pay about 30, that you wouldn't suddenly go, well, I haven't spoken to anyone, so I'm not paying anything, but you would continue to do your best to make a payment. Now, it may be in another scenario that when you've had a conversation, the share request, we go, okay, we can move the share request down a little bit for a period of time in order to try and meet you where you are, and you're able to pay, say, 32, 33, 34. And so the difference there is in the request, and hopefully the amount paid is not hugely different. So what we need to do and what we're working on is to ensure how we report that is clear, so that if you look at the information, people can recognise where a parish is under an agreement and one that's not, because what it might mean a big difference is the percentage paid is different. So I think the key challenge for us is to make sure we report it clearly so everyone understands who's looking at the data, whether a parish has had their meeting or not. I would hope that the actual amount paid for those who haven't yet had the meeting isn't significantly lower, because you're saying, well, we're just waiting for our meeting. That wouldn't be our intention. So there is a bit to manage there, but I think it's more about how we communicate the payments rather than what the actual request is in that period, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So Avis, you've got your hand there.
Yeah, 3 years is quite a long time in terms of changes that can happen with a parish and that can impact your finances, particularly depending upon the age demographic. For example, you know, if I look around as a church warden now, if I look around my church, I look and I think, you know, I've got quite a few people in their late 80s, in their early 90s. They have been contributing for a long period, and our experience is that those people possibly, certainly in some cases, contribute far more in terms of share than new people coming into the church. It takes time for new people to build up and probably contribute quite as much as older members of the congregation have done in the past. And I think also in that time you might have a situation where your priest moves on. That can certainly impact. We lost 4 people this year who were very good contributors because they didn't approve of things maybe that were happening with the Church of England. I just wonder how you will build in those sort of potential changes that can happen. I think it's a good idea, but I just wonder how you will take account of those factors.
Yeah, good question, Avis, and to an extent, the devil's in the detail with these things, isn't it? I think we are aware there will be changes, both possibly from a macroeconomic level. If there's another inflation spike over in a 3-year period, what do we do about that? So we are going to build in a level of assumed inflation of 3%. So we'll be assuming that level of inflation. And if that varied around it by a couple of percent, we probably wouldn't do anything about it. Now, if inflation went back to 10%, we as a diocese may have to reserve the right to say, well, actually our costs have gone up significantly, stipends have all been increased significantly, therefore we need to have another conversation. Equally, things can change at a parish level. Now, again, we're not looking to do something where we're coming back every 6 weeks and saying, actually, our heating bills are higher this week because we left the kitchen stove on by accident for an hour. We'll have a pragmatic approach to that. So if there's some variation, that's just the nature of it. However, if there was something significant that fundamentally changed the context on the ground, i.e. an unexpected roof collapse or something like that, then yes, we would be open to revisiting. You would get in touch with the team and say, is it worth us having another conversation? And we would do that within the practical capacity that we have. So yeah, we're open to revisiting, but we have to be on a practical basis just due to capacity.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Fiona, you've got your hand up there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just wondering. So, I think you've sort of answered it, and it sounds like you've not really decided. But I think I just wanted to make it clear that the churches that I work with, they're quite like, it's important to them, if they've paid their parish share in full, that they have that certificate. They put it up. They make a point that they've paid it. And I know you're saying that you've got details to work out, and that's absolutely fine, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate the fact that it is really important to them. They do compare with other churches, and therefore, however you want to like distribute the information, that's fair enough. But I think we need to make sure it's quite clear, because I have a feeling that people are going to get very, it's going to be quite controversial, is my point, if it's not really, really clear what's going on. Does that make sense? I know there's not really much you can do about it. I just wanted to, just so that you're aware of it, really. I'm sure you already are, but.
Yeah, and this plays partly into the reason for doing this, because we've moved to a position where diocese-wide in 2024, less than 50% of parishes paid in full. And what we fear is happening in some places is that the share request has become out of reach, and therefore, intentionally or unintentionally, there becomes a disengagement. I'm not saying it's an intentional thing, but when suddenly you're 20,000 short of your target as opposed to 5,000, the ability to say, well, what can we do to get there, starts to disappear from the conversation, because it just feels unachievable. So actually, as into that place where people take pride in trying to get to full payment, we think it's helpful to have a conversation that says, actually, this is realistic. And therefore, the certificate comes through and people are really pleased and proud to have that. So we would be issuing, I expect, certificates for full payment, both under the old system and the new. It's just how we transition through that is the key. So we would be very much still issuing certificates for full payment. And if the payment is through this share agreement process, whether that looks any different, that is a detail we haven't thought of. But we very much will want to still say, if someone has met the request that's been agreed, we say, thank you very much, and here's something to recognise that. That's our intention through this. How that compares to someone who hasn't been through the agreement process is a nuance we will just need to be aware of. So thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that anything positive with regard to how we encourage one another during this process that comes up, and we need to be reflecting that back for everyone, really, so that we can really sort of concentrate on the way in which we can uplift people's hope within it all. So anything like that, Fiona, I think is a really good thing to be feeding back. Yeah. Roger.
Right. Thank you. This question is supposed to be a supportive one. The presentation was introduced with the context of a £2 million deficit across the diocese. So I wondered if we could be frank with each other, and if anyone was able to say if the driver for this process is to increase the parish share overall above the rate of inflation to help tackle this deficit. And in with that question is, what is the proportion of the deficit that the diocese is expecting the parish share increase to cover?
Thank you, Roger. I think that's one for the CFO. Yeah, so it is fair to say that the current approach doesn't seem to be working. So I'd put it that way. So we can keep doing what we're doing, and I wouldn't expect anything to be any different. So we've been thinking, how can we do share in a different way? And as I say, I think there has been in some places some disengagement or just a lack of what feels realism from the diocese in what we're doing. So our hope is that as we engage, it is positive for everyone. And one of those positives, I would hope, is that over time we can see an increase in share. That is clearly in there. Now, that isn't going to be straightforward because we're still dealing with the same realities on the ground. So us speaking to you doesn't necessarily change what's happening in real life. But our view is if we work together, we have a better chance of moving forward together than if we work a bit like a tax collecting authority that sends out a statement and hopes for the best. So our idea and hope is, and our prayer is that as we work together, we will be in a better place than if we work separately at this. In terms of how much do I think it's made a difference, we haven't put a figure on that because of those things listed on that slide that make a difference. The big question for us is how much is going to come through from the national church in their review, because that will hopefully make a material difference to that position and therefore determines how much we need to get from everything else. So I can't answer that because I haven't actually given my board a view on that. What we did say is we think it's worth the investment. We think spending the time and money on this is worth the investment.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. David Folds.
Thank you. Well, first of all, James, it was good to see you at Bedale this week at the visitation service, and congratulations on a very positive service there, and welcome to that role. And I also would like to say that forums such as this are a welcome addition to the way that we're running now. It's good to be able to see people and get to speak. My question is related to the term agreement. If we're from a parish which is historically struggling to pay the share, and is paying perhaps 40% of a share historically, and is building up if you like, a historical deficit, which builds every year. You said earlier, I think Jeff, you said earlier that you would hope that the final agreements that you reach at the one-to-ones will be not dissimilar to the current share levels. But if the current share levels are completely out of reach for some parishes, at what point will an agreement turn into an imposition?
Yeah, David, and that might be a good opportunity for me to sort of pick up. I think one of the questions in the chat was asking, I think it was from Liz, about what happens if we don't agree in that process. And I think there is clearly going to be a challenge in there. Now, if we get into a conversation and a parish is just not in a position to come to what we consider to be reasonable, and it's really hard to say what is reasonable because context varies so much, then what we would probably have to do is say, well, the share formula as calculated just stands and we leave it be. There may be a scenario where we say, well, we can't get to a 3-year position, but we can agree year one. And so we'll do year one and come back and have another conversation in a year's time. So there are various parameters that we're playing with as to how we do that. But there is going to be a level at which we say, clearly this isn't going to work for us. And we have to be clear about that. It's not a case of everyone can have a 50% reduction because our costs will continue to go out. So there's going to have to be pragmatism from both sides in this. Now, it may be that somebody says, well, we need to have 1 year's grace because we're going to do X. And we can look at that and say, well, actually, if that investment is for the overall long-term benefit of this church, then should we consider that and do that? So I'm not going to give you an exact answer because I don't want to predicate conversations in each context which will be different and suggest that one answer will fit all. But we certainly are open to a conversation, but there will be a point where we may have to say, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. And we would have to probably just say we revert to the formula. And that's the answer for now until we can get to a place where we do agree.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aldo. So Judith from Handswaite.
I think maybe you've already answered. Oh, I'm sorry about my clock. Maybe you've maybe already answered my question, which was going to be what criteria will be used to set the 3-year proposal for those churches that come way down after a couple of years into the one-to-one meetings.
Yeah, so the share formula will continue to use the same inputs that we currently use. So that would be deployment, church attendance. So we'll fix that church attendance figure for the 3-year period. So using, as we currently do, we'll fix it for a period. And there's the social deprivation factor. Again, that will be fixed. Now, if something, say, the clergy deployment in a particular parish or benefits changes in that period, then clearly we have to come back and have a different conversation, because that's a key input as to how that formula works. But we will be using the existing formula to do that calculation, but we'll be building in over the 3 years a little bit of inflation to take account of the fact that costs will grow over that period.
Okay. And where are we? Keith, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, I come from a small rural parish at the north of the diocese. And what disturbs me is that far too much of our energy is spent on trying to raise money rather than spreading news about the gospel. And it's going to kill our church and many other churches which are in a similar position. Now, generally speaking, if within a family or any organization you haven't got enough money, you cut back on expenditure. And I wonder where the cutbacks are taking place within the diocese. I also wonder how much money is going to come from the Church of England nationally. People to whom we might appeal for money know that the church nationally has an enormous amount of money, 10 billion or however one wishes to look at it. And they're becoming, whereas they might be willing to give money towards the restoration of bells or something like that, they are not happy about giving money which is simply going to go to the diocese and into a pot and just disappear.
So if I take those in two parts, Keith, I think the first question about costs, it is something that we've been really focused on. So in my time with the diocese, the proportion that we're spending on frontline clergy and their housing has increased from about 63% of our budget to 72% of our budget. So we're really focusing on making sure that what we are spending is going up. So the costs in support functions, a lot of those support functions are vital, things such as safeguarding, children's and youth work, lay training. The costs that we're spending on those kinds of activities have fallen in real terms quite significantly and have reduced as a proportion of our budget. Now, there's always going to be debate about, well, should we have this, should we have that? Because depending on what your parish uses and needs. Now, some people will say you don't need to have that team doing work on interfaith, or you don't need to have that team doing on environment because that's not important to me. But actually, to many parts of our church, that is really important. So there's always an element of debate around this, and that won't go away. The question of the church commissioners is, to an extent, one that I can't fully answer. I won't deny that when we speak with national church bodies, we're very much saying, we want you to do more. And we are pleased that what they're putting out in the next triennium is an increase on the amount of their funds that they're distributing. Would I like it to be more? Of course I would, because that would help me significantly. And the more that they can give to us, the less we need to ask of parishes. So yes, very much I want the church commissioners to do more, and that's the view we make. Now, what they're willing to spend it on and how they decide that is outside of my remit. It really is. One of the things that they're really focused on that we do benefit from is giving funding into low-income communities, what they call link funding. And we are going to be receiving more of that in the next triennium. So that will help us subsidise the work in the poorest communities in the diocese. Now, that subsidy at the moment is largely paid through Share. So if we can get more subsidy from the national church for poor community churches, well, that means that hopefully we can redeploy some of the funding that's coming from more affluent churches elsewhere. So yes, we'd always love more, but there is a little bit more coming this time, though I would rather it be have another zero on the end, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. And I think it's fair to say, Keith, as well, that, you know, we're part of a process. And I think this whole shared conversation is part of that process, where we are looking at having conversations at national, diocesan, deanery, parish level on a much more integrated way. So there is a challenge going on at national General Synod at the moment to do with the deployment and how finances are considered in exactly the way that you've just put forward. But that's part of the general conversation that's going across the whole church. And the more that we are involved in these conversations, from parish through to deanery to diocese and to General Synod, the more we are making a collective decision about that, which is precisely how the Church of England needs to work. And actually that might persuade for finances to be used in different ways from the church commissioners. So I think that's just by way of saying, let's really keep these conversations going, because the conversations that we have at parish level to do with these share agreements can filter through. That's the way the process should work. Sometimes doesn't feel that way, but I would encourage us to believe in that process and make the most of it. David Kroll.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to add my thoughts about the church commissioners and the extremely large amounts of money that they are sitting on. After a lot of pressure, I know from various dioceses, they decided to allocate something like a third of 1 year's profits over and above their usual contributions to cathedrals, bishops and so on. I would like to see our diocese working with other dioceses in really stirring up as much pressure as possible on the commissioners, because we are scratching around for small amounts of money while they are sitting on thousands of millions of pounds. It is wrong and it needs stopping.
Yeah, go for it, James.
Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, well, I was going to say, I'm not here to speak on behalf of the commissioners, so I don't think I can give too much information on that. What I would say is that diocesan secretaries and finance directors like myself, we do work closely together, and we do speak with the commissioners, and views such as your own, David, are shared with the commissioners regularly. I know if they were here, they would very much want to emphasise that they have a commitment not just to the church of today, but the church of the future as well. And they're balancing their need to support today's church with what they hope will be a church of another 150 years' time as well. So I don't necessarily envy their job, but I certainly have a view on how they would do it. But yeah, there is a real tension there, and I know many people are grappling with that and would advocate, like yourself, for a little bit more of a loosening of the purse strings for today's church.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate what I was trying to say before, which is, if you do feel passionately about this, and why not get onto your deanery synod, and then on your deanery synod get onto the diocesan synod, and then be part of the wider conversation, because that's what they're there for. And as Jeff says, the team do advocate as much as they can, but we do have a say. We have a say through those processes, so it's really important that we're part of them. Andrew Arnold.
Yeah, hello there. I realise it's a financial meeting, and this is not really a financial point, but what is God saying to the church throughout the diocese and in Barnoldswick about the state of the church and the state that the church should be in the future as we move into the future? You know, what are we hearing about the kingdom rather than about the Church of England?
I think, Andrew, a very good point, and part of which we should be ensuring that we're prayerfully including in all of these conversations. I don't think it precludes financial strategy. I don't think it precludes these sort of important conversations as we're getting together when we're trying to discern the will of the kingdom. I think that the Scripture teaches us very clearly that the will of the kingdom is in the Holy Spirit when we come together. And if we can come together and prayerfully work these things through, then I think we're trying our best to discern that. But I think you're right in emphasizing that, so that that's at the top of our conversations. It absolutely should be. You're right. Yeah. Where are we? Noel, you've had your hand up again for a while.
Thank you. It's a question for Jeff, and it's a long preamble to a very short question. Pre-COVID, we were a 2-church parish, and we entered into the agreement with the diocese whereby we paid our parish share in full for 3 years and did a stewardship scheme, and our historical parish share debt was written off. We went into COVID, and of course, we went into debt again. Since then, our sister church has closed, and my church would regard some of that debt as belonging not to us. What do you intend to do, Jeff, about historical debt in parish share during this process?
Yeah, historic share arrears is always a thorny issue, and one that I must say I don't particularly like at all. The first thing I always say at any conversation about historic share is that my focus is on the payment of current year share and what we can do going forwards. Whilst historic share may have some uses in terms of sort of maybe giving archdeacons and others a view of what the pattern has been over a long term, predominantly, I think the conversation is best focused forward. So we do still do the 1/3 write-off where those pay in full. What usually happens where a church or a parish closes, I should say church, is that if there is historic share directly related to that church, is that it is written off at that point. We wouldn't intentionally transfer historic share to another parish because that isn't helpful to anyone. So if you think that's the case, that we've maintained some historic share relating to something that's already closed, then do get in touch with us after the meeting and we can look into that. But I would just emphasize that my focus, particularly given where we are with the overall payment levels of share, is to really focus on where our current levels of share are and growing that. Often I find that the historic share creates a conversation that doesn't actually take us forward in any things we're trying to do.
May I have a follow-up, please?
Yes.
It's not another parish. We were 2 churches in 1 parish. What I didn't say was that my church has paid its share in full last year and intends to do this year. And Jeff, by reading the website for the finance team, I didn't think that the 3 share write-off rule was still happening. I thought it had to be further back than last year and this year.
So what we don't write off share that has arisen in recent years. So it is still share that was from, well, I'd have to check my dates on this. So it's the old share. So if you didn't pay 2 years ago and paid this year, we're not writing off the most recent share, but we have tried to remove some of the long history going long way back. We're trying to remove that. I wonder, Noel, if you want to send me any details. I'm conscious of time and I don't want to take it all up just on share arrears, but if there is any details that you want to send me, or at least let me know which parish we're talking about, I'm happy to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just being conscious of time too. Doug, are you able to ask your question?
Yes, basically it's to broaden the discussion really. I've been treasurer at Collingham now for a number of years. I'm just coming to the end of giving up. But something that's always agonised me is our position. If you look at the share we're asked to pay compared to the general level of giving and income we get in a year, there is no way many of the years where we could attempt to pay the share. And yet, Collingham, for historic reasons, arcane reasons, is sitting on assets of about £600,000+. Question for all of you is, should we run that down to pay the share, or should we sit on it to use its income, its interest, to help with our day-to-day running?
Well, I think there's a bigger conversation there, isn't there? And there'll be many views around this screen as to how that should be done. And I'm not going to tell any one PCC how they should run their things. Hopefully, we're all aiming for the missional and church, what's the best for our church and local community. And I would argue that there would maybe be a place where sometimes spending very significant reserves ultimately is better because it's an investment for the future. But there's so many local contexts that I can't speak to any one particular place without knowing the restrictions on funds, where it's going out. So I'm going to try and duck the question, but say it's a very good debate for another forum.
Well, I've conducted as well. I mean, when these new visits we're going to get, at least that's sensitised the people who will visit the parish, even if it isn't me they talk to. But it's been a dilemma.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of having assets?
I think that's a very good question, Doug, and I think it's a mission one. I think it's a kingdom one. I don't think as trustees we're required to make money, but we're required to use it wisely. So that would be the first point to say. But I think it's a wider conversation. But thank you for that. John, are you able to ask your question? John Hodges.
Hello. Yes. Good evening. I can see how these new proposals of having one-to-one conversations will be of great benefit in parishes which are not meeting their share. They will help them, to realistically perhaps adjust the share targets to something that they're more likely to be able to meet. And also, they will enable you to find ways of supporting them, Janet to support them in raising more funds in order to meet their share. However, the question I ask is that I come from a small group of parishes in rural North Yorkshire, and all 3 parishes meet their share. How will this process help us? We must surely be afraid that what will happen is, if we're meeting our share, the donkey will simply be asked to carry more load.
No, good question, John. And I think the first point to emphasize is that, like I said, the calculation basis will be consistent for everyone. So what our sort of expectation level, all other things being equal, has a common calculation approach. So we wouldn't say, well, because parish A is paying less, we're going to ask John's parish to pay more to make up for that. That isn't how it works. We'll have a common set of assumptions for everyone. And unless a parish was saying to us, can we pay more? And we do know there are a few places that are saying, actually, the formula doesn't calculate properly for our context on the low side. We would assume in most places people wouldn't want to go above what we're actually asking for. We'll be delighted if they do. But yeah, I do recognise that there is a challenge. And one of the things that we heard from dioceses that have done this, particularly from Manchester, is ignore the 100% payers at your peril. In the sense that if you one of the approaches that could have been here is let's go and speak to just those that are not paying 100% and come to the 100% payers in year 3. But Manchester really cautioned us against that, because actually just because the parish is paying 100% doesn't mean things are all easy and going smoothly. And actually they, as much as anyone, may benefit from a conversation for support and also for awareness of what's coming down the track. So we would very much value still speaking to those who think they're able to pay 100% and would hope to do going forward. You may say, well, actually, it's not helpful to us and you can best spend your time elsewhere. But we think it'll be fruitful to speak to everyone because I think everyone has got things happening that we can support with.
Okay.
Just on time, James, I'm just conscious of time. If anyone does need to go, don't hang on just for the sake of this meeting closing. I think we'll do a few more minutes of Q&A. I myself have got a church thing to get to after I've had a bite to eat by 8 o'clock. So if people do need to drop off, do so. But I think we can probably do another 10 minutes myself if that's okay.
Yeah, are we all happy with that? I'm certainly happy with that. If we've still got a few questions in the room, which I think if Jeff and Janet and Anna are happy to hang on a little bit, then we can just get those done. So Stroma, do you want to ask your question?
Thank you. I know we've talked a lot about share, and obviously this is the parish share agreement process. I'm just conscious, particularly in my smaller villages, that while share is quite a big contribution and a big issue that we have to, to look at, it's also in the context of our regular bill paying and paying for the buildings. And actually, we had quite a big hit this year. We had 4 parishes that all had their QIs, and we've been left with quite a phenomenal amount of expenditure just to maintain the buildings, to make sure they're fit for purpose. And I'm wondering, when we have these conversations and when we meet with the stewardship team, whether as part of a broader conversation we can actually look at some of those other pressures, because actually the timing of some of the QIs and things with parish share agreement requests could actually be quite important in terms of whether we feel we can actually make that.
Jana, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, certainly we will consider the QI reports, and certainly if you have urgent repairs that have to be done within the next 12 months, we would certainly take that into consideration with your parish share request for that year. And so it may be, you know, the situation that we can reduce the parish share in first year, but then maybe look at increasing it for the second and third year. And that might help to help you through that period. But also, as a stewardship team, we will help you look at grants and fundraising. I mean, I find so many parishes do have reserves that they can use, and they tend to use all of their reserves for repairs and paying for repairs, whereas actually they can use some of their reserves to match funding from grant funders and make their reserves go further. And that's something that we found that we can help parishes with.
Okay.
That's great. I think that bigger conversation would be really helpful. Thanks, Janet.
Yeah, thank you, Stroma. So I can't see any other hands up. Have we got any of the chat questions that haven't been asked? There was one which, how will the new system show how the diocese has better analysed historical data than giving an expenditure in a parish before entering into discussions at parish level? So that's just about being aware of having analysed past data. I'm presuming that that's actually part of what's going on already.
Yeah, so I know, for example, since Anne started, she's already starting to gather data together and to make sure that we're making use of everything we already have locally in understanding a context. We will then, when we come to those webinars, share what other information we think would be useful to have. So we are aware that churches spend a lot of time preparing accounts, filling in returns of parish finance, stats submission, etc. So we'll have all that information already. But there may be other information, such as latest QI reports, etc., that we don't have. So we'll be seeking to gather as much information as we can, but also enabling you to send us information that you think we may not have, so that we're all on the same page when those conversations start.
Okay. I think a lot of the questions in the chat have been very skillfully answered by Janet and Anne as we've been going along. I'm just trying to make sure that we haven't missed any. David, sorry, David has got his hand up there. Just very quickly, David.
Just a quick question about the historic parish share, really. It seems to me strange that we count what is a request as a debt. And I understand in terms of how it might look, but a lot of the money which is historic non-payment of parish share is never likely to be paid because people haven't got the means of paying what they're paying at the moment. And it actually can be a disincentive to keep on trying to pay your parish share because you're always aware that you're actually owing a lot more than you can ever pay anyway. And I'm wondering why is there's this, for me, what was a new thing in coming into this diocese, is this idea of the historic legacy of parish share, when actually it's never been in any of the other parishes I've worked in the past.
Interesting question, David. And I do try to use the phrase unpaid historic share and never use the word arrears or debt for the exact reasons that you talk about. For it is not legally a debt at all. All parish share is a donation from a PCC to the diocese, and therefore someone who doesn't make a donation isn't in debt. So I do try intentionally not to use the words arrears and debt, and any of the policies that we have in place don't use that. And to be honest, there has been debates at finance committees and Leeds Diocesan Board of Finance Board about whether the whole concept should be abolished. There are still some who advocate that it does help understanding, particularly when it comes to deployment changes or when there's been an interregnum as to how a parish's financial health has been over a period of time. And I have had archdeacons who have asked me to maintain the system so that they have a view over the long term on to many other factors as to how financial context is. That would never be the only thing that would consider as to whether deployment would be a reappointment or not, but it is one of the factors that is looked at. In a context where everyone pays as much as they can all the time, it's a very unwelcome thing. we unfortunately do have some places that see parish share as something that they don't want to engage with, despite having the ability to do so. And therefore, in those kinds of contexts, having an understanding of what hasn't been paid over time does add us a little bit more light as to where we are. So I would argue, yes, probably in 95% of contexts, it isn't something that ultimately we should worry about. But there are a few places where we actually do want our parishes to understand that what non-payment means, because when they pay very little, somebody else is subsidizing all their activities. So maybe it is a little bit of a sledgehammer for a nut. But yeah, I do understand the concerns. I do understand that.
Can I just follow that up just very briefly with the idea that I get the idea of having some kind of record of what parishes have and haven't paid in the past. I think that is really helpful on a local basis and on a strategic basis as well. But the idea of the fact that you're reminded of it every year feels to me that sense of putting it back down is such a, oh, we've got to do that as well, is how it feels very often in the local church. I get for those churches which can pay but won't pay, I think it's a really useful thing to remind them of that. But I think there are probably better ways of doing it than just a figure on a bit of paper.
Yeah. I would hope, and I'd have to check with my colleagues, that we haven't sent that out in the last 2 to 3 years. I certainly requested a change of approach a while back where we didn't put the information on our website, we didn't send out the arrears statements, and my understanding is we haven't done that for some time. Historically, it was always done and it was done regularly, but that's one of the things we tried to change a while back. But apologies if they have come in the recent past, because that's certainly not my intention, because I agree with you on that point.
Okay, thank you, David, for that, and I think we can follow that up in general in the way things are presented. Just conscious of time, we're really pushing on. Francis, you've had your hand up for a while now.
Hi, yes, good evening. There was one of the comments or messages on the chat which resonated quite closely with our parish and benefice, and it was the message from Clarissa Milbank. Will the church attendance factor change? The present statistics take no account of a church service that takes place once every 5 Sundays in the different 5 parishes. So, and it, like with us, we have 2 services per month in our parish, and we kind of all share and try and sort of visit each other's churches. So I don't know if that's something that's been considered.
So we do try to already take account of that where we know about it. So some of you will recognise in your own requests, we have adjusted that for those patterns. If we haven't done that across the board, then that's an error rather than intent, and do let us know. I think that was one of Janet's responses in the chat. So do let us know if you think we are double counting, because we are aware that where there is services taking place in different locations, it's often the same people attending in those locations. So we're very much not looking to double count those people and take account of it. So do let us know, and we'll look to take account of it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I think we're almost there. I think if people are left with questions, or if you go back and suddenly think of that incredible question that you wish you'd asked, or just if you're just a reflector and need that time, please do email the team with any follow-ups if you need to do that. That's absolutely fine, because we're compiling a whole set of the questions and the responses, because it gives us a sense of a shared conversation, which is precisely what we're hoping to enable. So please don't go away thinking you wish you'd asked the bit that you wanted. Is that all right? Do we think we're just about there? Jeff, Janet, Anne, are you happy with that?
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, James.
Thank you. So I'll just bring us to a close then, and just want to really thank everyone who's come this evening and given of their time. I want to thank you for the incredible work, genuinely incredible work that you have been doing and are doing continually day by day. There's something about this process which I hope will be acknowledging that, so that we're able to communicate that to one another outside of our own particular contexts, because that's what we're supposed to do as the church. And I want to really thank Jeff and Janet and Anne for the incredible commitment that they show, and the wisdom and the brilliant way of expressing what are sometimes quite complicated ideas as well, so simply and carefully. And I just commend them to your prayers as well, so that we are all supporting them in this incredible work. So I'll just finish with the grace, which maybe you want to join in with. So the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.